We should end every episode with "Oh."
That's the roller coaster episode.
I know. I was just thinking it might turn into a thing.
Just
now.
like suddenly it's Teen Wolf, or we're like Wolfgang Jack,
Yeah,
or what?
they're
Wolfman
like,
Jack,
"Wow,
not
what are they
Wolfgang
talking
Jack.
about?"
Wolfgang Jack. Wolfgang Jack sounds like if Beethoven made cheese. Hey everyone, it's Elliot.
And Todd. Welcome to Two Designers Walk Into a Bar, an ongoing conversation about pop culture and iconic design.
In honor of International Podcast Day, we're taking a look back at our own origin story.
How the podcast began, why we continue to do it, and what could be coming next.
It's the story of two friends, one shared profession, and the pop culture love that kickstarted it all.
Yep, so mix up a couple of White Russians. We're taking it slow and philosophical as we wander back into the bar.
Okay, Todd, so here we are. We're back in the
Yep.
bar, and we've had a number of episodes over 4 years that we've done, right?
I've heard that. Yeah, I'm looking at our website, and, we've done a thing or two. I love it.
Me too. And, I hope we keep doing it for a long, long time, for years to come. So you and I have been fortunate enough. We've guested on some other podcasts. We've
Yes.
done some speaking gigs. We've had some articles written. And I think one of the things that routinely comes up is our origin story. So maybe we could talk about a few different things and how we got to now with the podcast. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think there's a lot of things that tie us together if you start looking at it.
Okay, so maybe we talk about, do you want to call it our meet cute? Do you want to talk about when our friendship started?
Yeah, but don't go into a lot of details just for law protection reasons, I think.
Right. Yeah, there's some NDAs have been signed. We can
Yes,
anonymize, we don't have to use real names.
Yeah, but we've known each other for almost 30 years.
That's crazy.
Can you believe that?
It feels like it's been 40 or 50 every time you ride my ass about that bar tab.
I know. We were babies when we first met, too.
We did some bar hopping together.
Yeah, we did. We certainly did.
Yeah, we worked together, and we had some fun with some friends together. So
yeah, we traveled together.
Yeah, we've done that.
We do pretty well with each other.
We do. We manage to tolerate one another, if nothing else.
It's because we have some common loves, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think our pop culture sensibilities are one of them. And really, that gets me thinking about what led to the start of the podcast. Cast your mind back, everybody, to the early days of COVID when everything was shut down. And we were talking about, I had called you really sort of out of the blue, I think, if I remember correctly, because I was sort of hit hard by the fact that an illustrator who we both love, Mort Drucker, legendary illustrator for Mad Magazine, among many, many other clients, but I was introduced to him originally through Mad Magazine. He had passed away, and he was, like 94 or something like that?
Oh, yeah.
And I read that, and it was one of these things where you were the first person I thought of.
And, we both... our conversations always were sort of freewheeling. We referenced sort of things that we both love. We joked about it. We made fun of things that we didn't love because that's what you do.
Right.
And, it always came up about our common love of the world's best movie that has ever been made.
This woman has to be gotten to a hospital.
A hospital? What is it?
It's a big building with patients, but that's not important right now.
I think every conversation, it was always referenced at that point.
That's true. That's sort of my litmus test. If you meet someone new and you make an airplane reference and they don't pick up on it, that's when you sort of say, well, I have enough friends.
That's right. And I'll say, if you've listened to our podcast, maybe more than one, you might have heard me say that when Airplane did not win an Oscar, that's when my faith in the Academy went downhill, Busters.
That's right.
If you want some real people, get Elliot and Todd in the Academy.
But pro wrestling is still real, though, right?
Oh, duh. Yeah, of course.
Okay. I'm just checking. I mean, I need to see how your vantage point of the world may have changed.
Yeah, duh. So we started talking. We're like, hey, you know what? I think I might have even said, we're pretty clever. Wouldn't it be funny if other people could listen to us and see and hear how clever we are? I might be expanding that story a little bit.
How do we package and sell the clever?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, so we started thinking about, hey, let's record some of these conversations. Like, we didn't even think of them as really an episode or anything like that,
not
right?
at all.
It was just, hey, start to record this thing that we love to talk about. And we weren't talking to talk. We were talking about it because we loved this thing, right? So in the case of Mad Magazine, it was, do you remember when you were little and you read this article or saw how this illustrator approached this movie or this topic or whatever? And it was just so formative in terms of, you and I both talked about how we would mimic Mort Drucker's illustration style or trace, the way the guy drew hands, the way he drew caricature. I mean, it was just so well done.
Right.
It was really incredible. And so we thought, well, surely there are other people out there. We can't be the only two people in the world who love Mad Magazine and Mort Drucker or Airplane. Right. I mean, heaven forbid if we're the last two people who love Airplane.
I know.
We decided to record an episode. I think we recorded that first episode 6 or 7 different times because we had no idea what we were doing.
That's right. It was at least 5 times, I know, but you're right. We, as you said, we didn't know where it was going yet, but we knew that we enjoyed talking about this stuff and we could record it at the same time.
And I think it was something fun because it really was a creative journey on a couple different levels.
Yeah.
It was the reward of researching and walking back through things that we loved. And taking a stroll down memory lane. But then it was also learning something new with regard to storytelling in an audio medium and packaging it up in such a way that other people would be engaging with it. So I think that's really the joy of this, at least to me, as we've launched the podcast and continue to grow it over the last several years, has been, what else can we be talking about? Yeah.
So that makes me think then, what the listeners are tuning in for, Elliot, they want to hear us talk. They want to hear us pontificate with opinions and things. So you want to tell me what you think your top 3 favorite episodes are so far?
Oh, okay.
Me and the listeners, I should say, because they can listen in. They can listen in while I'm listening.
Yeah. Well, perfect. I'm glad this all worked out. I think there's something to this podcast format.
Okay. I think it's catching on. I'm starting to like it.
It's the future. Okay, so, boy, that's like asking which of your children is your favorite. Good thing you and I each only have one child.
Yeah, that makes it a lot easier.
We have 2 children. We each have one.
Yeah.
We're not that progressive, folks. If we did only have one child, guess who'd be
back
paying
on track,
for college?
Elliot. Back on track. Get back on track, Elliot.
All right, okay. So speaking of Mad Magazine, this is very easy for me, actually.
Okay.
I would say one of my favorite episodes would be episode 11.
Okay.
Which is Wacky Packages, Garbage Pail Kids, and the Mad Magazine connection.
Yes. How enlightening was that? Yeah, because we decided to pick 2 things, both from our individual childhoods.
Yes.
And Garbage Pail Kids, I certainly knew about them around in the 80s, but I wasn't a collector, but I was crazy about Wacky Packages. So
I was too. So you'll love this. I think, if I remember correctly, my parents introduced me to Mad Magazine, and I believe my mom bought me my first, because I was young when Wacky Packages came out. I was probably kindergarten, first grade, something like that.
Yeah, you were below 10.
Yeah,
probably,
easily. But she, I think, bought me my first Wacky Packages pack. And I chewed that cardboard gum and looked at those stickers.
I bet you looked at those things and some of them were salacious and they were gross. I bet your like 6 or 7 year old self, I bet you laughed your ass off at that stuff.
I still laugh my ass off now when I look at it. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But I think the thing is, and this goes into the power of branding, is I immediately knew what the knockoffs were, what they were parroting, like Crust toothpaste instead of Crest. Like we had Crest in our house, right? So I immediately knew what that was.
Yeah, that was wonderful. I encourage everybody, if you have a soul and you love Mad Magazine, go back and listen to episode 11.
Yes, and we have wacky packages on our episode page for you to look at.
Yes.
So you'll know what we're talking about. Tide, Wheaties, like there were no prisoners. Just like Mad Magazine itself, if something was out there, it was going to get lampooned. And speaking of things out there that were going to get lampooned, I feel I need to also talk about Garbage Pail Kids because
go ahead.
Cabbage Patch Kids, I can't tell you the level of vitriol my brother and I had in the 80s for Cabbage Patch Kids. So when Garbage Pail Kids came out that totally lampooned Cabbage Patch Kids and their adoption certificates and all that crazy crap, we were right there.
You're like, this is for me.
Yeah, like a laser target.
Yeah.
We were immediately in there.
Yeah.
We instantly got it. Like, it instantly clicked, and we were just like, hell yeah. We went out and we collected all of those. And then going back to this connection, it was the same geniuses who had made wacky packages. That's what made it so great.
Brilliant.
And then these guys were all involved with Mad Magazine. I mean, in hindsight, it makes complete sense. Now that we're sitting here years later, it makes total sense because that through line and that sensibility just resonates, right?
Yeah, you said the right word there, through line, because that's one of the things I know that you and I have kind of stayed excited about. We call it the story, but I absolutely love finding these threads that tie things together that everyone knows, everyone recognizes, but you don't know the story behind it. And these are certainly inspiration to both of us, as most of the things that we talk about, maybe everything we talk about, it comes from a place of love and inspiration. But then when you start, like, going through the ancestry of pop culture, you really do see some commonalities.
Yeah, and just to wrap up with one closing thought about that before we shift gears, we had just went through a Gen X series. If folks haven't listened to those episodes, please go back and listen to the origins of Gen X and pop culture. So I am firmly Gen X, and so naturally this idea of sticking it to the man and making a buck while doing that, I absolutely loved with both Wacky Packages and Garbage Pail Kids. And this idea of these seemingly goofy parodies, there was actually a deeper level of sophistication behind them, right? So things that have staying power, I think things that are really funny, that have shelf life and staying power, like Airplane, going back to that for a second, there's something deeper there that spans. It's not just of its time, right? It's sort of this timeless humor. And Todd, speaking of timeless humor, I feel it's time to shift gears to my second favorite episode.
All right.
And these are in no particular order, by the way. So when I say second favorite, I mean, gee whiz. So I would say the next episode is episode 21, The Onion, Batman, and the Joy of Well-Designed Books.
Yes.
I mean, where do you even start with this?
Yeah.
You brought the Batman book to the table, designed by Chip Kidd.
Yes.
Who, like you, loves Batman. And why don't you take a moment and just talk about that?
Well, I do love Batman, and I do love Chip Kidd's work. Chip has actually responded to us, posted on some social media, so hopefully you're listening again.
Hi, Chip.
Hi, Chip. We miss you. Give us a jingle. And anyway, my love of Batman, I was a small child when the TV show came out in the 60s, so I wouldn't say that I saw it then, but I recall lots of crap with Batman on it. And I fell in love with that later in the 70s. So that was my gateway drug into the Batman ethos. I wasn't that kid that was all about the brooding Dark Knight stuff. I was like, nah, give me some Dutch angles and some funny colors and some corny dialogue. Give me that.
Yeah, Zap and Kapow and all that good stuff, right?
But I would say, while that is really part of me, the Onion is Elliot. Like, if and not that it was just a great design book, Our Dumb Century, but you just live the Onion.
And I am so happy to announce, for those of you who don't know it, that the Onion is actually back and it's actually being printed again.
Oh, okay.
So
good,
you can
good.
subscribe and get an issue a month of the printed Onion, and I think I'm going to do that just because that's just one of those things that I feel needs to exist in the world. It just gives me hope.
I think, yeah, and you've said multiple times, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you've said multiple times, if my house is on fire, somebody throw me this book.
Exactly. And me and the book are leaving.
That's right.
And then you're on your own. Yeah, because I think this book might be out of print, actually. I'm not sure you can find it.
Okay.
Hopefully they'll reprint it for the uninitiated. But just at a very high level, this book is basically a quote-unquote compendium that's 100 years of the Onion. And it parodies so perfectly the current events that were happening in each of these eras and the design of newspapers in each of these eras and sort of the cultural moments and political outlooks. And it is just pitch perfect parody.
So smart.
Yeah, it's
so
super smart. So I think the reason why I like this episode so much is they're both books. And the design of the books is so true to the subject matter.
Good point, yeah.
They are both so perfect. So you mentioned Chip Kidd, and his layouts were really staying true to the mid-century sensibilities of Batman, right? The color, the campiness.
Right.
Something's big, something's small. And it was really sort of this comic experience. And like I said, the Onion just nailing these different eras in newspaper design. You know, in the 80s it started, for example, to look like USA Today because that was the huge new thing, right? Digital publishing, this national
That's what
paper.
Everyone wanted to do.
Yeah, look at these infographics. So it's just so perfect.
Tell us that episode number one more time for the people that you have sold on listening to that now.
Episode 21.
All right, perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
So now let's shift gears, Todd, to my third favorite. Again, not third favorite in terms of ranking, just third favorite.
Just
and then
third on the list.
Yeah. I had to narrow it down to 3 because otherwise there was going to be a fight. And we get into enough fights in the bar as it is.
Speaking of fights.
Why don't I have a
hold
drink?
my beer.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah. So the third episode, I think, as we look back, is episode 63. This was part of our comic book series, and this was the Charles Atlas versus Art Instruction Schools episode.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
How fun was that?
Oh, man. I love this so much. Now, the research was great for both of these businesses. And this is the thing. I thought they were both sort of these fly-by-night situations. But they're actual businesses. And Charles Atlas, unbeknownst to me till you brought that to the table, it's still around.
Oh, yeah.
And there were several legitimate illustrators, including some guy who made some small-time comic strip called Peanuts. Do you remember his name?
No, nobody's going to remember that.
Well, anyway, he was one of the students and later an instructor, Charles Schultz, at Art Instruction School. I mean, it was crazy. So
Isn't that funny?
These were these things that lived in the backs of comic books and ads that you could find on matchbooks and all of this different stuff. And you thought, there's no way in hell this stuff is legitimate in any way, shape, or form. And, the whole trope of getting sand kicked in your face at the beach.
Yeah.
I love that. And dynamic tension. And draw this pirate.
I love it.
On paper, as we're here talking about it, people are like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean?
That's right.
You know, it just seems like it's a scam. But yeah, so I would say that, again, Charles Atlas is so well known, and the Draw Me ads from art instruction schools are so well known to people of, I wouldn't even say a certain age, because it really spans multiple
They
ages.
transcend it.
Yes, very much so. And so I would say, again, if you're pinning my arm behind my back, making me choose 3.
Kicking sand in your face.
Yeah, exactly. Calling me skinny, insulting my girlfriend. I would say, so the fly-by-night programs from the backs of comics would be my third choice.
Yeah, I would agree. Okay. Speaking of fly-by-night programs, did you happen to bring your wallet this time?
What do you think? I mean, I walked over. I don't need my driver's license.
Okay, well, speaking of some kicking sand, there might be a fight during the break, folks. Hi. We want to take a moment to mention that if you're enjoying this episode, we have an archive of topics ranging from the Olympics to movie posters,
Think Ghostbusters,
iconic images,
Think Bigfoot,
punk music,
The Ramones,
Saturday morning cartoons,
The Pink Panther,
and failed products like OK Soda. Visit our website at twodesignerswalkintoabar.com for full episode notes and visuals, the latest blog content, and to sign up for our newsletter.
Follow us on social media. We can be found on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Find the links on our website or search using the phrase 2 designers walk into a bar.
Most importantly, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps more people like you find podcasts like this.
And tell a friend about us. Send them a link to our podcast from your listening platform of choice.
And if you're inclined, buy our merchandise. Stickers, coasters, magnets, t-shirts. We're designers. We make good stuff, and it helps support the show.
Get in touch. Use the contact form on our website or send an email to hello@twodesignerswalkintoabar.com.
We read every message we get. Honest.
And we're available for speaking gigs. Email us to learn more.
Okay, now, back to the bar.
Todd, your generosity knows no bounds. I am so happy we have a couple fresh cocktails here in front of us. But, since you bought the last round, I think it's time that listeners heard your top 3 episodes.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I loved taking the walk down memory lane with the episodes that you mentioned. And I'm bringing a couple, too, that you might not expect. Let me just say that.
Okay. All right.
But we'll see. Again, mine are not in any particular order like yours. They were just when I look across the vast landscape of content that we create.
In our Indiana Jones style warehouse of past episodes, yes.
Exactly. And publishers, we know you're lining up to get more of this, so come at us. But anyway, I'm sorry, I'm digressing there. We'll edit that out.
That's the new round of cocktails talking. That's
right. We'll edit that out. All right. The first one I wanted to talk briefly about was our iconic images episode 22. Do you remember that one?
Yes. I love this episode.
Yeah.
This was our highbrow, lowbrow episode.
It was. We talked about the flag raising of Iwo Jima and the spotting of Bigfoot, which, I mean, you can't get much more highbrow than spotting Bigfoot.
And for the record, Bigfoot was not spotted on Iwo Jima.
No, so far, those were not the same time. But the reason I love that particular episode, there's a couple. Everyone knows those images so well.
Yeah.
We didn't have to describe them too much. But what I love is our backstories, because each one of them obviously is a frame of a camera that was snapped, or in the case of Bigfoot, it was a particular frame from a 8mm movie. So you don't know the backstories unless we were here to tell you. And there were some really interesting backstories that led to these photos happening. And in both cases, history was kind of made up.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Then, because some of them, didn't exactly happen the way the world has come to know.
Yeah.
I mean, the image is there, right? That's
Yeah,
good.
sure.
But not taking anything away from them. But, there's a little story. So, listeners, you need to go back and check that episode out if you haven't. One of the also things that I love about that episode is because they were about events and places, we did a really good job, I think, of putting people in that place with the stories.
I'll agree to that.
We talked about the time and the people and what they were dealing with and all that stuff. So the iconic images has a great sort of hidden story in there, and I thought it was presented nicely too. So thank you, Elliot. Good job on that one.
It all went downhill after that, right?
Yeah. Well, hold on. I have 2 more episodes to talk about before we
okay.
can say that. So the second one I wanted to talk about is part of our pop art series, and actually the earliest one in that. It was called The 1960s Scene and the Emergence of Pop. This was episode 51, and what I love about this is, again, we dug into it a little bit, and there's been plenty written about pop art. It's certainly, people know what it is. It's probably one of the more mainstream art movements that your aunt and grandmother would know. But there was not a lot of origin story out there, and we pulled on some of those threads and learned that there was really a small group of these rogue artists, in a very small area of Manhattan in Greenwich Village, that didn't necessarily know each other, but then they kind of started hanging out, and they were like, wait a minute, I like products, you like comic books, there's something to this.
Right.
And I love that we learned that most of them had day jobs too.
Yes.
They were not fine artists. And as a matter of fact, because of pop art being pop art, they still were not considered fine artists when they were making pop art.
And I would argue a lot of the fine art that they did reference the subject matter and techniques that they'd learned in their day jobs.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That's a good point. And I think one of the things that really caught my love of this particular episode was, we're both, you and I are pop culture junkies. We have said that a bazillion times. And so were these people.
Yes.
And they did something with it, and became household names. And I have to say, it was on the heels of our Beats series that we did, which was the pendulum shifting, wasn't it? So from the intellectualism of the beats and all the deep stuff that went into that to the early 60s, late 50s of pop art.
Yeah, and I think that it's no accident that really, as mass media in the true sense of the word was coming about, pop culture was right there to take full advantage of it. And I would argue shamelessly. Warhol, right? He was absolutely shameless about it.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I think if you look up shameless up in the dictionary, there'll be a picture.
It's him trying to sell you something.
Yeah, it'll be like, you can buy this space. I will autograph this for $1.
Exactly. Is this your record album? Let me just put my name on the front of it.
Yeah, right. Blah, blah, blah. But yeah, really kind of some good takeaways there for us. The last one that I wanted to bring up in my top 3, and again, like you, these are in no particular order, and we probably could have talked about our top 20 or our top 30, because they've been so fun to create. But one of mine that, this was a recent one. It was episode 79. It was the one we titled Signs of the Times. This is when we talked about the pawnbroker balls and the barber poles.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I have to say, I'm glad I've got a spit guard on my mic by saying pawn bowls and poles and barber poles. So anyway, because I'll have to clean that later if I didn't.
That's right.
But okay, so why did I dig that? Well, everyone on the planet, I would say, if you said, can you draw the symbol of a barber? Mm-hmm. They could draw it, right? Mm-hmm. If they had a couple colors, they could really draw it well. Or, do you know what the symbol of a pawnbroker is? Yeah, they could draw that. But then that subset of people gets really tiny when you say, can you tell me what they mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
And they would be like, no, a barber pole was just birthed whole cloth outside of a barber.
It's just this thing. It just says haircut.
It's been around forever. Why wouldn't it be that, And I love that there were some legitimate stories behind their origins. Mm-hmm. I love that there was some controversy with some of the stories because, Elliot, this is not a secret. I do love a controversy.
You do. You're a shit stirrer.
I do love to spill the tea. And anyway, today, they may not matter so much to patrons, but I dare you, listener, to listen to that episode, then go to a barber shop and not think that you're also going to get some minor surgery done as well. Take a listen to that.
What's going to happen when that hot towel's on my face?
That's right. Don't cover up my eyes. I got to see where the knives are coming out.
You know what would be interesting, and I didn't think about this at the time when we recorded this. It would be great the next time you do get a haircut or the next time you do swing by a pawn shop to take a look at something, ask the people working there if they know what the symbols mean, like if they actually know the stories. I bet you barbers will. I think some barbers will.
Yeah, but if you're going to, a trendy shop, they're not probably even going to have a barber pole.
Well, no, you have to go to a place that is a legitimate barber shop with a barber pole. Yeah, not a salon or something like that.
Well, don't say that with such piss and vinegar in your voice. Some of us like going to the salon. We've got to look here.
Yeah, well.
Anyway, all right. That's a road we'll fight about another day. But let me ask you this. What do you think you've learned so far in all of this content, all of these episodes we've created?
Great question. I think I can boil it down to 3 things. Okay, so the first one is this idea that the story is really the hook.
Yeah.
So you alluded to this a minute ago, that the thing, the artifact, the object, whether it's an iconic photo or a universal symbol or whatever it may be, that's really the foot in the door, right? Because that's table stakes. That's the thing.
It's the recognizable thing.
Yeah, like everyone knows about it. But again, as you mentioned, they don't know how we got to now,
right,
and where this thing came from. And so the people, the circumstances, and the cultural moments are really where the interest lies, right? That's sort of peeling back the layers of the onion. See what I did there? The onion.
I love it.
And really digging in to the deeper story. And I think that helps inform all of us with our creative approach and how we do research and how we think about problem solving and how it relates to human nature and some of these bigger things that we have to tackle as creative people.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the first thing. I think for the second thing, it goes back to what we were talking about at the very top of this episode when we mentioned that we had recorded the first one about 6 times. So ruthless editing. And so there's so much in these stories that can be talked about. You mentioned scandal. We've talked about just how we can describe some of these things in great detail. We're using an audio medium to describe visual things, right?
Right.
And so good stories are typically pretty juicy.
Yeah.
And so it's a balancing act, right? You have to have fun, but you also have to get to the point.
Right.
It should be about both the journey and the destination.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so thank you, listeners who have stuck with us this far in this episode. We appreciate that you are with us as we get to said destination.
We do care about the destination.
We do.
Believe me, yeah.
The third one would be this idea of passion project as creative outlet.
Yeah.
So, Todd, no secret, we're designers. That means we have deadlines, and deadlines mean that you have to deliver. And so we have a cadence when we have to publish these episodes. And I think it's a wonderful forcing element or mechanism to get things done, right? And so it's this idea of not making great be the enemy of good, right? People will tune in because of a story, or they'll tune in, to your point, because of scene setting or banter or affinity with subject matter, or hopefully the hosts, right? They're not going to say, I really wish they'd used a different music bed there, right?
Yeah.
So not to be too hypersensitive. And it's almost like we said from the beginning, take what you've done, learn from it, and then move on to the next thing. Like, don't make everything you're doing so precious. So if you're somebody considering working on a podcast, just ship it. Ship the product, get it out there, post it, learn from it, and move on to the next one. And like design, podcasting is a community with plenty of fun, creative people to meet. I really enjoyed some of the other podcasts we've had the privilege to be guests on. I've enjoyed the guests that we've had on this podcast as well, and just all the support that we've gotten as we've made some new friends.
Yeah, agreed. We've had some great conversations as we've had guests on our podcast and as we've guested on other podcasts.
So you always make fun of me for being the egghead and blah. But my guess is you've learned a thing or two besides how to buy me another round of drinks.
I can't help it. Yes, I have learned a thing or two. But I have to agree. The very first thing you said, story is the hook. It's all about the story. And you know, I do love a controversy. You accuse me of that plenty of times. And, you know, there's nothing like that to push the story along.
You're known as the Geraldo Rivera of the Maury Povich of design. I think that's an earned title.
That's right. I gladly will claim that mantle. And something that you say a lot, you remind me a lot, and I try to remind myself a lot, is on some of these stories, what more can we say about this? Because, you know, like I was saying about the iconic images or the pop art thing, everybody knows it. Everybody knows what. We're not going to sit here and talk about the details or the, you know, the artistic sensibilities around these things. Everybody who has seen it can guess that.
Yeah, that's why you were attracted to it.
That's right. So we have to build that story. If we can't find anything that is interesting to us, then we're not going to talk about it. Which brings me to a thing, which is I always want to look for the why. Like, why did someone do this? Or why did they say this? Or why did these people get together? You know, and I love that because, again, I love that idea of the golden pop culture thread that ties so many things together when you start to pull it apart.
Yeah, things don't happen by accident.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the second thing for me, the second thing I learned is that I love creating a sense of place. You know, it's not surprising. Most of the things that we talk about did not happen this week. You know, we're not a topical podcast, although we have had a couple things that had changed brands, and you know we've mentioned that. But in general, we're going back in history, sometimes a short amount of time, sometimes a longer amount of time. And I love that we bring the stories and the sounds and the people of, say, the Bowery of Lower Manhattan, or North Beach in San Francisco, or Studio 54. And to me, those really transport me to that place as we're talking about them.
And you reminded me of something else that we get asked a lot, is who produces the podcast?
Yeah.
And it's us. So with regard to that scene setting, Todd does all the sweetening in the episode, so a lot of those ambient sounds that you hear that really help to take you to a place, that's his work. So I want to make sure you get credit for that.
Oh, well, thank you. I consider it a partnership because you certainly provide tons of ideas. And you also bring up a point. If any interns out there want to work for free for two wonderful bosses, that would be great.
Learned
We'd love to
so
hear
much
from
about
you.
podcasting. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
But you're right. I think if we do our job right, the listener's imagination takes over the story and they start seeing, I'm going to do that in air quotes, they start seeing what we're talking about.
Yes.
You know, we take them out of a bar and the barroom story and you feel that immersion. So we love to continue doing that. The last thing for me, I would say, that I've learned, and I didn't go into this necessarily thinking I'm going to learn something, but I really love mainstream pop culture. That excites me. Now, we call our podcast Two Designers Walk Into a Bar. We definitely are not hiding that we're designers, and we bring that sensibility. But, you know, folks that may not be a designer, it's not about just fonts and colors and things like that. It's about concept and idea and context. In other words, it's about everything we talk about when we're setting that place. So we love bringing that same kind of scrutiny of something, that same digging of something to bring an idea. We love bringing that same acumen to these other topics that are not necessarily about graphic design. Like I mentioned before, the beats or pop art. You know, Elliot, you've accused me many times. I love a scene.
You do. Sometimes you love making a scene.
And I love Canadians. So
Oh, that's true.
those two things. So this was fun. This was fun, man. Looking back, you know, we've created a lot of really good content, if I may say so myself. And listeners, leave us a review on your platform of choice, please.
Oh, great suggestion. Or drop us an email
Yeah.
at hello@twodesignerswalkintoabar.com. And hey, you know who else creates great content?
Who's that?
Our bartender. You know, and when he looks back, here's
I
an
see
idea.
where this is going.
Yeah, get his attention. Why don't you wave your wallet in the air while I just step out for a moment to see if the food truck's arrived yet?
Nice. Yeah, I should have seen that one coming, shouldn't I? All right. Thanks, Elliot. This was a wonderful trot down memory lane. And dear listener, we'll see you on the next episode.
Take care. Enjoy Todd's corn dog he's going to buy you.